Fatherhood still is the most difficult thing that I've done in life. After 12 years, some days I still feel like I don't have a clue. But it's getting easier. Or at least I'm learning to cope with the challenges that it brings along the way. I'm Brett Farrell, and this is Fatherhood. I've been talking to fathers to see how they handle this thing called fatherhood, because through sharing our stories, we all become better. This is a monthly podcast, so please subscribe, and each new episode will find its way to your favourite podcast player. Be encouraged by the stories and share them with your friends, because as the Beatles sang, it's time to come together. In this episode, I talked to Adrian Smith, who has recently become a father, but it wasn't plain sailing.
The very thing that your wife desires is the very thing you can't give her.
Adrian is a pastor at Northside Church in Sydney, Australia, who, with his wife Claire, is going through the adoption process.
You look back and you go, if that had happened, that thing that I planned, like we wouldn't have this.
Yeah. After years of trying to have a child, Adrian had to confront some serious truths.
I remember having a bath one night and just sobbing in the bath, just yelling.
I'm Brett Farrell, and this is Adrian Smith. There's no doubt in my mind, in anyone's mind, you're a father. But your journey to get there was a little different than most. I mean, you've chosen an adoption path. What was the reason for choosing adoption?
Like many people in this country and world, tried to have a child for 5 years and just couldn't. So we went through that process of looking at IVF and doing all the tests that you do to find out why is this not working. And then basically we're given subpar news.
But how do you figure that? I mean, I guess, couples marry, they try for kids. Some people take longer than others to conceive. How do you get to a point where you go, maybe we better check something out here?
I think it was 2 years in. I can't quite remember now.
Yeah.
We went to the doctor earlier and they just said, I think it was a 2-year period is kind of that's what they give people nowadays.
Okay.
If it's not happening, maybe come and we'll do some tests and see what.
Right.
So for some friends, they just changed their diet significantly and that was the factor that helped them. And so we just kind of went down that path to see, okay, well, what's going on here? And then it just unraveled into, well, it's going to be difficult. And so we tried heaps of things, and then we've got so many friends that have been through IVF, and it's such an intrusive procedure. Yeah. Even the point to which you actually try IVF, it's like the doctor's appointments are intrusive. Yeah. Like it's bare all. Like
so to speak.
And it's horrible. It's really horrible. And it's horrible. Like my heart broke every month because the woman has a monthly reminder that it's not happening. Yeah. And so as a guy, you're there going, well, and then we found out that it was on my side, not the female side. And that's the first assumption people make, is that it's always the female that may have issues. But for us, it was on my side. And so guilt sets in and,
Why guilt?
Well, the very thing that your wife desires is the very thing you can't give her. Like that's horrible. And so month in, month out, you get a reminder that it's not happening.
Of all the things that guys don't talk about, infertility is the most taboo. As a young man, to be confronted with the fact that you're unable to produce children and then dealing with the pain of not having kids how you hoped, I wondered if they ever thought about giving up on the dream of becoming parents.
I mean, sometimes when you're on a holiday and you think, kids would just ruin this moment.
Every father ever.
Maybe like, this double income, no kids thing's pretty good. But no, that was never an option for us. Claire's a mum. Like seeing her now in this mode is just incredible. And so that was never a discussion.
And how was she to hear that? I mean, I guess probably supportive, but how was Claire during hearing this news?
Devastated. Because we both, the thing that we wanted would seem to be getting further away, not closer. The longer we tried, the further away it got. And so, she was heartbroken, but a loving, supportive wife goes, okay, well, what's the next step? What do we do next?
What's that like? Do you get the results back, obviously, and the doctor says, sorry, I've got some news for you. Is Claire with you at the doctor's at the time, or do you have to go home and share the results with
No,
them?
I went on my lunch break to the doctor to get this news, not thinking that it wouldn't be great news. And I sat in the car and cried for a long time. And then I called Claire and I said, the doctor's just given us this news that, basically I don't think I've got the material to help in this. Try not to be so straight in this answer.
Honey, it's me, it's not you.
Yeah. It's exactly that news, that this is going to be difficult.
Was there any ever conversation about, well, maybe we should, because you're at a stage in life where you're young, no kids. Is there any ever conversation about, well, maybe we should just call it a day?
There's definitely conversations where you're like, well, where does this leave us?
Yeah, okay.
Is the reason we're together just to have kids, or is it more than that? And so there's definitely been times in our relationship where we need to really fight here.
Yeah.
And fight hard.
How do you step through that?
It's messy. We always wanted to be transparent because there's people that don't talk about it. Shame gets attached very quickly to something like this.
Did you have to work through the shame you just mentioned there? Is that something you had to unpick?
Yeah, that's probably still ongoing. There's a lot that goes into that thought of it was different to how I hoped it would be.
Yeah.
I remember when it first happened, there was a period there where, in this fight that I talk about in our relationship, there was a period there where I just kind of went into my shell and we weren't communicating well. And it got to the point where Claire sat me down. You got to make a decision here because you can't keep living like this. And she was very straight and a loving wife, and I'm very thankful for that conversation. And I was just an awful husband at that time. No, I just was a recluse. I just didn't communicate.
You weren't engaged?
Yeah, I wasn't engaged. I was there, but I just wasn't there. The fight was for that, just to come out and go, okay, no matter what the circumstances, no matter what I try and attach to this as what it says about me, that's not who I am.
It's easy to understand why Adrian checked out. I'm pretty sure I would have too. I'd not want to face up to that life-changing news. It challenges all stereotypes and concepts of manhood, and then there's the frustration of all that trying, and it was all in vain. During that whole period, did you see your prayers changing?
Yeah, they stopped for a long time, and then they changed, and it was sometimes they involved words that I probably shouldn't use often in praying, but
yeah,
they've changed a lot.
Were you angry at God?
So angry. So angry. I don't know if I was angry at God, but I was angry.
The circumstances, at least.
I remember having a bath one night and just sobbing in the bath, just yelling at God. I was just like, what the heck?
Yeah.
And that whole sentence, this is unfair. And I think coming out of that, the best thing that I realized was sometimes they're the best prayers you can pray.
Yeah, they're honest, aren't they?
Honest. That's all God wants from us, is just what are you actually feeling right now? Where are you at? Let's have that conversation.
Yeah.
Rather than try and put poetic language around heartbreak. It's just, and so I think my prayers have evolved just to know that God wants me to communicate in the mess.
Yeah.
And communicate the mess. Tell me how you really feel. If you look through Psalms, the language of the day is David's heartbroken at this stuff. And he's saying, God, how dare you be so lousy?
Yeah.
And so for me, that was what I was saying. It's a bit lousy, really.
Yeah.
I've questioned everything and I'm still here and I'm still moving forward. So
what's the future look like for you now? What do you see in the future? How does that look? Project 5-10 years in. What's your life look like?
Palm trees and mocktails on a beach. I don't know. I stopped doing that.
So why is it you've stopped thinking about the future?
It's a good question. For many years, we planned we're going to have kids this time, and then we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. And then when that all didn't happen, it's like, well, you can't really plan for anything. Through that whole journey and that whole battle, I would say, I realized more and more just how my own plans, this hindsight's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Now that this boy's come into our care, you look back and you go, if that had happened, that thing that I planned, like, we wouldn't have this.
Yeah.
With this incredible moment that we have. If God had granted me that prayer, how immature that would have been, like, we would have been in a much different place.
It shook me that Adrian seemed to have given up on his dreams and now accepts what comes his way. Unmet expectations can be crushing, but even though the wind was taken out of his sails, he's now a dad. His heart's desire. It just wasn't how he planned. What do they train you for? Because, I'm a dad too, and I never got trained. So what's that about?
It's more around, they talk about adoption, what it is, how it works in Australia. They sell you the good and the bad.
Okay.
They often have people come in. Well, for us, they had people come in that people that have been adopted, parents that have adopted, and so they tell their story and what their process was like, and so you get a good understanding of, okay, these, often it's about the backgrounds as well. So these kids are coming from broken families. They're in this for a reason. So you get told all that, and then basically at the end, it's like, so do you want to go ahead? And then you go to the next stage, and
What surprised you when they in that session?
I think it was, our heart broke a little bit in that, because they're talking about, I think the stat was at that point, 80,000 kids across the country in care. So, and what they call is out-of-home care at the moment. Mm-hmm. So 80,000 kids displaced from their biological family. And so that for us was like, wow, this is, like, these kids need love and support. And so that was probably one of the main things. I think when there was a girl that had been adopted, she came in and she had been all over the news because her birth mother had left her at the hospital.
Oh.
And she was telling that story, and she was just this beautiful girl. And to hear that, it was just like, oh, this process works. This is a really beautiful thing. And just to see her happy and smiling after such a rough start to life was really cool.
What's it like from your side of the fence when you walk out of that room and you think, oh, what do you reckon?
Although it's confronting, we still had such an incredible peace about it that we're just like, this is part of it. This is part of our journey. And so we talked about, there was the question. Actually, I don't think there was ever the question, do you want to go ahead with it? It was just the assumed that we were on that journey and that's where we're headed.
Yeah.
But then it's just the paperwork every week for a long period of time. You're at a doctor, or you're putting your finance records together, or there's just so much to it. They know everything about us.
I can understand they might want to know your financial position, so whether or not you can take care of a child. But the medical records, what's that about?
Full medical. It was very surprising.
Like a fitness exam or something?
Yeah. Which, that's the part where you just go, this is odd. No other parent would have to have it. And it's weird. It's super weird. But again, the whole idea of adoption is around the child. And so they just want to know, are you going to have a heart attack a week in and then this kid's going to be displaced again? Or I think they just want to say, what's the longevity of this relationship look like? And are we setting this kid up for success? I think that's the goal of it. And so you kind of just go through going, it's part of the process. It's nice to know that we're fit and healthy.
Got a medical out of it as well. I guess we know that it worked for you. You were, is it gifted a child, given a child, presented with a child?
We became prospective adoptive parents.
Prospective adoptive? What, there's another hurdle?
Yeah,
Wow.
So we've been placed with this little boy. So there's two ways you can adopt. One is voluntarily the kid is put up for adoption. So 18-year-old girl, this is a complete example. 18-year-old girl says, I can't care for this kid, but I don't want to abort.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put it up for adoption. So that's voluntary adoption. Or else it's involuntary adoption, where the kid has been removed from an environment of harm.
Right.
And so from now, basically, this little boy's in our care. And then for the next little while, we go through the process of building a report to submit to the minister to say we should adopt this boy. And the FACTS, Family and Community Service, work with us to do that. So they say this couple should adopt this child.
Do the birth parents at this point still get to see the child? What?
Yeah, so...
Hang on. Let me just frame this. Because of circumstances, the child is placed for adoption, placed into care, then ultimately placed with you and your wife, Claire.
Yeah.
But the parents still see the child.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Hang out in a park, basically. No, so they've done a lot of study into this. And so if you look around the world, there's closed adoption, which historically it has been, where it's you adopt a child and then at 16 you might say, just need to tell you a little secret, you're adopted.
Ta-da!
Ta-da! Like it ruins someone's identity. And so what they've, and of course the stolen generation in Australia too, plays a huge part into this. And so what they've found is that from a kid and their identity, knowing where they've come from, knowing the circumstances around it is the best thing for them to form a healthy identity of who they are and a healthy attachment. And so...
But does that work practically? I mean, you go to a park.
It's super weird, yeah.
Where you say, hi, parents.
Yes.
Birth parents.
Yeah.
Have fun.
Yeah, so we sit in a park. I think it was really confronting. So we've done 2 visits now because it was so fresh. The first visit was very confronting because so the process is when you get told that you've been placed with a child, you get a profile. You get told all about birth parents' background, everything like that. And so you have an understanding of where they've come from and what challenges they've had. And so when you go to meet them, you have this in the back of your mind. You're like, I know a fair bit about you. They don't know as much about us. But the thing that for us was, it wasn't intimidating in a way of this is our boy's birth parents. It was more, I understand everything you've been through to get to this point, and that breaks my heart. That you don't have your boy in your care. Like that's horrible for any parent, as you would know. And so we kind of went into that going, how do we love these people the best we can? Like how do we show that we care even though the circumstances are just so weird?
The adoption process is much harder than I ever imagined. I thought it was just taking in a child in need. Having heard this, I don't think I could adopt, and I was open to it. But the idea of having ongoing contact with those who gave up a child and yet remain in the child's life is too much for me. But I guess that will bring forward dads like Adrian, who can love in spite of the circumstances. So, all a bit weird, but 7 weeks ago you picked up your son.
Yes.
From, I guess, foster care then?
Yes.
Picked up your son from foster care and you jump in the car and you drive home. What's that moment like for you?
Such a bittersweet moment. I think for us it was the most joyous moment. Like this is something we've been on a 5-year journey for, this desire to have a child. And so for us, this was the moment of like, God's answered our prayers and this is incredible. But then you look in the revision mirror and you see this little boy that we're still a stranger to him and we're driving him home. We're as happy as Larry, and so our heart kind of broke in that moment because we're like, this boy is being taken from all that he knows. And so we're driving home going, again, we're so happy, but gosh, we need to care for this kid because he doesn't really know what's going on at this point. And so it's a weird feeling. When we got home, he was fine. He's definitely had moments, less now, but there was definitely moments where you're like, I can see something's going on for you. You're upset, and it's not a reasonable response to just waking up. Like you're quite upset, and you can see there's something going on, and the only thing you can think is that they're having a sad moment, and so you just cuddle a little longer. And it's weird because sometimes it's you parent, let's say, somewhat opposite to what you would when it's your biological child and you've had since birth, because your aim is a clingy child, whereas it's kind of the opposite when it's a biological child.
Yeah.
You don't want clingy. You want an independent child, that because there's that attachment. But we do everything that we can to try and get a clingy child because we don't want him just going up to a stranger saying, take me home. Like
that's what happens. Yeah. It's normal for random people to take me home.
So there's a lot that we do that's really intentional that would probably look weird to other people, but we want attachment as strong as possible. And the best thing is that he's got a really healthy attachment and has attached really well.
But there's things I think all fathers do that seem weird.
That's true.
So I think you guys probably one of the most normal things about your circumstances is you just got to figure it out like everyone does, right?
Just guesswork. Now I sit in the normality of life with a little boy in our house, and it's cool.
Has anything surprised you about being a father?
Oh, so much. I think the normality is the surprising part. It just keeps going. Life doesn't. I think the normality of life and just how. I mean, I've always babysat kids and been like, it's just now it's just that's every day, and so I think for us, like we're only 7 weeks in, and that's a weird thought. It feels like we've just been doing it forever.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is a lovely thing.
It keeps getting fun and challenging, and
we get to know this little boy and his quirky personality. And
does he speak yet?
He says bits and pieces. Mum, Dad.
What's that feel like the first time he said that?
What was that like?
Yeah. First time he says Dad.
Incredible. It's like, it's a moment I've dreamt about for years and years, and then get this little boy in our house and he's saying, Dad, Dad, Dad. And I was away for a couple of days with a church thing, and I got back and I walked into the house, and the first thing he did, he was just this biggest smile and then grabbed both hands around my neck and just nuzzled in and kissed me like that. That was special.
That was Adrian Smith and how he became a dad. I don't feel different to Adrian in many ways, except for the obvious. I didn't adopt my kids. But I do feel that he was better prepared to be a father. I remember lots of classes about what to expect during the birth, but there were none about my role as a dad. We need more help than being left to figure out fatherhood from TV shows and our own experiences. You'd have to get your dad jokes all polished up too now, wouldn't you?
I've had 6 years, I've written a book on dad. No.
Well, I want to buy it. It'll probably improve mine.
No, so there's dad jokes to be had. Yeah, but even saying that, like saying I'm a dad still feels super weird. Like that's a strange sentence to put together.
Thanks to the show's producer and editor, Loretta Farrell, to Northside Church for the room to record in, and to Claire and Adrian for letting us tell their story. I'm Brett Farrell, and this is Fatherhood.